All right, NBA. Let's get into some of my NBA predictions here on today's show. We did our NBA preview. That is up on the channel. If you haven't seen that already, make sure you go check that out. But I'm going to predict what I think is going to be the Western Conference Finals, and then moving on, obviously, to the NBA Finals after that as well. We've had, a little bit of. There's been 2 games here, right? It's like most people, when you do this, you probably should do it before you see the 2 games. I'll be honest, I haven't sat here and locked in to any of these games. I was watching the Bulls game last night against the Pistons. That ended up being a great game. The Bulls, I mean, they were kind of viewed as one of the worst teams in the NBA going into the year. They had a big lead for most of the game, tried to blow it, but were able to hang on for dear life. How about Matas Buzelis? 21 years old, first-round pick a couple of years ago. He might be the real deal. He might be the best player. I think the Bulls took him at like 12 or something. It was like kind of the middle of the first round. It seems like he's the best player out of that draft class, so there's some reason to be optimistic there with the Chicago Bulls. They've been to the play-in 3 straight years. They've lost all 3 times to the Miami Heat, so don't view them as a threat this year as the Bulls continue to try to rebuild, right? I mean, you had the Derrick Rose years over a decade ago, and that was great. And, my take on that is Derrick Rose would be viewed as, I'm not going to say Mount Rushmore. That's only 4 guys. But he would be viewed as, like, they got that All-NBA, top 75. Like, he'd be in that mix if he didn't have those injuries. Derrick Rose was absolutely unbelievable. They were the 1 seed, right? They were going to beat LeBron before he got hurt. And then, obviously, the Bulls really have never been able to bounce back from that. And they've kind of been in this constant, rebuilding phase here. But, yeah, I'm excited to get to the United Center at some point. I haven't been there. I've been to Wrigley in Chicago, but haven't been to the United Center. And just the history of that place, you get chills just seeing the intro music, and then they pan to the rafters, and you got, Jordan's 23 up there and Scotty's number and, the 6 banners. It's incredible stuff. But the Bulls, of course, are a ways away from, getting back to that level of basketball. But conference finals, the Western Conference, look, is a gauntlet. I think over the past couple of years, it's like Boston's been so good, and here comes Cleveland and the Sixers. They have Embiid, they have a chance with him, and then here come the Pacers, right? But a few years prior to that, the West just dominated, and it feels like we're kind of back to one of those seasons. As it relates to the NBA, to be completely honest with you. The East, the good news is it's anybody's conference. Like anybody, there are several teams that could go up there and win it. And really, I don't think if you said, X team is going to win the East, I wouldn't be like, there's no way, or, that's a complete shock. No, it's completely wide open as it relates to that. But we'll start in the West here. And look, the Oklahoma City Thunder, I mentioned this earlier in the week on the show. I think you get caught up and these teams win the title, right? And, I mentioned it with the Nuggets and the Celtics there, and you're like, wow, they're just so good. They won the title. They're going to come back and do it again next year. And the reality is, in this day and age of the NBA, that doesn't really happen. And then I kind of made the argument like, well, the Thunder, it seems a little bit different. They're all so young. They're all coming back. They're all clearly hungry to do it again, just kind of hearing the vibe around the team a little bit. After, during the ring ceremony on opening night, it's like, these guys are starving to get back. Jalen Williams, of course, coming back from injury. He's not back yet. That's obviously a big loss for the Thunder here at this point. Look, the Thunder, they're going to go to the Western Conference Finals, in my opinion. I just think that's going to be kind of what happens here at this point. When you're talking about the Thunder, they got too many pieces. They defend so well. They've got young talent. They've got a good coach. Stable organization, stable ownership group. They know what they're doing from a personnel perspective. Shea, of course, won the MVP last year. He's tremendous, right? And he was kind of a non-factor there in the first half against the Rockets opening night, and then boom, just kind of pops out onto the scene there in the second half. Did a tremendous job. Shea's going to be great. Chet's incredible. He kind of held things down for him in the first half of that game there as well. The Thunder, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. They're going to win a lot of games, and I think personally they're going to find themselves back in the Western Conference Finals. And the team in which I think they are going to be playing is the San Antonio Spurs. And Victor Wembanyama, look, it's, he had the blood clot issues, and obviously, as a young guy, that is, very concerning, and you certainly hope that doesn't show up again, right, for Wembanyama. If he stays healthy, he will win a championship at some point, and he will win an MVP at some point. That's just, he's an alien out there. The guy is 7'4". I think he's 7'4". Maybe he's 7'2". I think he's 7'4". And he's got handles, and he can shoot, and he can dunk, and he can pass. Like, it's just, he's a complete freak show out on the court. A complete freak show. And obviously when you have a guy like that moving around like that, health is a big concern. Again, I mentioned the blood clots. That's a concern. But if he's healthy, it's only a matter of time. And he's a kid still, by the way. It's only a matter of time before the Spurs win a championship. Obviously, Pop has gone upstairs. President of basketball operations, I believe, no longer the head coach. One of the assistants was promoted. But Wembanyama, he's that guy. And obviously, he has an advantage being as tall as he is. But that is a really, really good team if he can stay healthy. And you've got pieces around him as well. De'Aaron Fox, by the way, is hurt. They were able to get him in that trade. Remember that 3-team trade that, Levine and DeRozan, they left Chicago, went to Sacramento, and Trey Jones and Herter and those guys went to Chicago. It was a big 3-team trade, and the Spurs ended up getting De'Aaron Fox, and they're going to get him back, and he's going to be tremendous, right? He had that run a couple of years ago with Sacramento, and he's kind of been quiet the past couple of years. He's a really good player. He's a really good point guard, and he's going to fit in beautifully with Wembanyama. And Stephon Castle, he's incredible. He was now a second-year player out of UConn. He was, one of my favorite players as a freshman at UConn. I think he was kind of what propelled them over the top and allowed them to win the national title. He can flat-out defend. He's in year 2. He's tremendous. They're on that team, and they've just got several pieces all around there as well. And I'm really excited about this Spurs team if Wembanyama can stay healthy. When you look at things on the Eastern Conference side, I mentioned earlier in the week, I just don't think New York, Jalen Brunson, I like him. I respect him. He's tremendous. Clutch player of the year last year. Incredibly clutch. Incredible scorer. Incredible leader. I don't know if he can be the best team on a team that wins a championship, or the best player on a team that wins a championship. I don't know if he can be. It doesn't mean I don't think they're getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, though, because they're all back, and they got a new coach, Mike Brown, instead of Thibodeau. I respect Tom Thibodeau. But, it's 2025, and you're going to sit there and play your starters every minute of every single game. That's just stupidity. What are you doing? You have to adjust off that a little bit. And the load management stuff has gotten, carried away in the NBA, no doubt about it. But you can't do that. You got to give these guys some rest. You got to have, more guys that you work into a rotation here. And Mike Brown's going to do that. He's going to change their playing style. I think he just brings more of a joy, right? Because Thibs is all basketball all the time, no fun, no nonsense. And, that can wear on you after you do that for a few years, especially if you're not winning titles and hoisting trophies, right? Belichick, it worked so long in New England. Why? Because they were winning like crazy. Yeah, the Knicks have won a lot of games over the past few years, but they're not raising trophies. And, is it unfortunate for him that he got fired after all the wins? Yeah, but they needed a shakeup. They needed some more joy into playing the game. I think especially with basketball, you got to play with joy, man. It can't just be, no fun, all, no nonsense, just strictly, we're going to compete each and every night for every single man. You got to be, it's not football. It's a little bit different. And you got to have a different style, in my opinion, to be successful here in 2025, especially with these young guys, right? You got guys now, the Knicks are a bit of an older team, but here in the NBA, you got guys that are playing professional basketball and they're not even 20 years old. So I think just a change in culture a little bit is going to be beneficial for New York. They're going to win a lot of games. Got them facing off in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Philadelphia 76ers. For several years, the Sixers they're going to go to the NBA Finals. They have a chance to win it all, and they continuously get to the playoffs and choke. Right? And Joel Embiid, he can't stay healthy. He's hurt. By the way, these predictions, if a star player gets hurt, it's, borderline wraps at that point. But nobody's really talking about them. Tyrese Maxey is a dog. And how about VJ Edgecombe? Yeah, that guy's really good. As he had his first game last night, he went off. He scored a ton of points there in the game. And if he can be someone that is really, really good for them, and you can pair him with Maxey, and if Embiid can stay healthy, they're going to be really, really good. So I've got that being the Eastern Conference Finals there. And sticking right there, I think the Phillies going to come out of the East. I do. If Embiid's healthy, look, I don't sit here and pretend to like Joel Embiid, right? I think the MVP that he won should have been Jokic's, but they just kind of were tired of giving it to Jokic, so they gave it to Embiid. Right. But, look, if they can stay healthy, Maxey's incredible, right? They've got kind of it's a stable foundation they can build around. Say what you want about Embiid, but he's a great player. Edgecombe appears to be a hit. They've got some depth there on that team. I think they're going to go to the NBA Finals and kind of silence some doubters there a little bit. And then, look, I've got the Spurs pulling an upset. I've got the Spurs pulling an upset here and knocking off the reigning champion, the Thunder. It'd just be kind of boring to go up here and say that the Thunder are going to repeat. Wouldn't surprise me at all if it happened. But, I mean, just seeing Wembanyama, and I get it was one game against the Mavericks yesterday, but they just completely dominated the Mavericks. And seeing him, like, he was matched up with AD, and it was a one-on-one situation, and he was just crossing him up, and he, like, hit a step back, and it was an and one. He got fouled. He made it. The dude is over 7 feet tall, well over 7 feet, and he's doing that. That is just absolutely ridiculous. AD looked like he was my height out there, and AD's huge. Right? So just Wembanyama's a complete freak show. Only a matter of time before that team, if he can stay healthy, wins the championship. And I'll be a little bit aggressive here, and I say they're going to get to the finals. I got them winning the finals. I think they defend well enough. I think, and a lot of times, I don't think promoting, when your coach leaves, promoting is always the best situation. Sometimes it's like, well, let's go outside the company a little bit, and let's find the best available guy. Not the case here with San Antonio. What he's been able to do, Pop obviously is their guy, tremendous, one of the best coaches of all time. And, he had the health issues. If he didn't have those, he probably would still be the head coach here at this point. He goes upstairs. It's still very much got a Pop feel to it. Like, this isn't a completely different team. It kind of feels like, Pop's still running it. And, it's a guy that's been in the organization for a long time. He gets promoted, and he's kind of the new guy here beyond Pop. And I think that's going to really help them a lot. When De'Aaron Fox is going to come back, that's going to be electric. But, I've got the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama hoisting the trophy this year. And, I think the NBA, and they've done a good job of this, but if he can stay healthy, they really need to wrap their arms around him because, he's not an American, but, he speaks English, and, he seems like a really good kid, has his head screwed on properly, and he's a great player. And, he should be featured. You got LeBron and Steph as often as you can on these primetime, big-time network games. Wembanyama should be right there as well. I get him on TV as much as possible. And, he's a tremendous talent. He is a complete freak. And if you haven't watched him yet, I really encourage you to do it. So I've got the San Antonio Spurs getting it done and hoisting the trophy here at the end of the season.